lightsaber battles in that episode.
And the robot
None
assault.
of them matter.
It was punching.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hu Yang had a fight with the robot.
That was weird.
That was really weird, and it looks bad.
Combat between robots.
Mm-hmm.
That was very.
Really? Not even gonna use a Rock'em Sock'em robot joke there.
Live with Anakin and Vader. So
It's the greatest
I
scene in
can't
cinema.
even. I'm shaking.
No, I should say, because there are people who might be subscribed to MauLer that aren't subscribed to MauLer, and so I don't even know what we're talking about necessarily. But basically, like, I saw the episode, got so annoyed, made a mainline YouTube video out of it, and then I pissed off a whole bunch of people to the point of one of them trying to false flag my whole channel.
oh yeah,
That was an
that's mature.
adventure.
That's
Yeah.
mature.
One of their fans was like, we can't get him on copyright. We'll have to get him on hateful content. It's so.
Yes, he's just sort of admitting he pissed people off with that video. I don't approve of the false flagging, of course, but bad tactics is the mum word for this. So the premise is bad tactics against Ahsoka. I have EFAP there, but EFAP's personal coverage of this seems to be rather bad media reading. Semantics. I probably could work on that myself, but not like I have any popularity or any credibility to go with. Not probably going to gain much of it by doing what I do, but you know what? I think someone should think about how things will come from the other side. So why I'm not going to advocate for Ahsoka here. I actually see potential, not great potential, but better than what we have been getting with stuff like Obi-Wan and even The Mandalorian. But maybe I'm just seeing what I want because Ahsoka is so vague and has such write it as you want style that I leave my own impressions on it. Personally, I don't mind that writing style if there's certain little tidbits that can lead you in certain directions. And when certain people, media critics, don't pick up on those certain things, strikes me as a little odd.
Airing recently, the first 4 episodes were a clusterfuck of abysmal writing, with the primary disaster being a complete lack of anything close to effective characterization for the main cast. I struggle to know just who the fuck any of these cardboard cutouts are or why I should.
The show is shit, you say. Why am I arguing for the show? Not really arguing for the show, just pointing out a few certain qualities about MauLer's coverage that might come across bad and bad faith to people who actually like the show. For example, for this cut of MauLer's Star Wars Can't Grow Up, he starts with 2 really small unbridled praises before going into pretty much one of his unbridled rages. Just a little unbalanced. It will come off badly to the people he should be trying to convince that the show is shit.
Should care, and that's from the parts of the show where something happens, a whopping 5%. It doesn't help that the actresses playing this collection of corrugated statues on wheels feel the need to resist emoting as though the survival of Disney's stock prices depend on it. But here we are, the episode where Ahsoka is lost in the world between worlds.
Like this, why am I arguing for the show? I'm not necessarily arguing for the show. MauLer never gives arguments besides logical ones, and he wouldn't even do an argument about the show being copy-paste, being better than older material that they stole from. Let's see the argument. I've gone over this a few times already with even some fans of EFAP.
Star Wars can't grow up because it's catering to these children. They're behaving like children, and they're feeding each other. They're feeding. It's a cyclical kind of problem. If the fan base was mature and was denouncing all of these horrible, not horrible, immature. Yeah, if they were criticizing all the flaws, if they recognized that they're being given, jangling keys, then Star Wars would be able to grow up, because they would be like, they would still want to make Star Wars, but they would have to try harder. We would get things more like Andor, not necessarily in content, but in
but you don't really
direct content, but
the way he
the
frames
approach
it in the video that it makes it seem like it's more of these nitpicky thing, but there's also other things I have to critique. And don't think just because I have issues with this video
Sure.
that I think it's complete trash. A lot of the points he bring up are very good. It's just the fact from a media perspective, it could be a lot tighter and use much better comparisons. See, I'm not criticizing MauLer because I believe Ahsoka is a well-written series for this. Definitely not. More about one of these nitpick things. Maybe it's just me. Do you guys think it's a problem to sort of just criticize the particular style for improvement of content creation?
Yeah, no, that's good.
I mean, some people will find that a
They-
little bit
they
stupid. Even
definitely-
if you agree with
generally,
the general
yeah.
premise, you sometimes think there's holes in it. I do think there
Mhm.
are holes in this. Go through this to actually pick them out. That's why I sort of want to do this also.
I think that's something that MauLer himself would kind of value in terms of, oh, if there is a hole in my argument, show me and prove me wrong. Is kind of what he likes to do anyway.
They also, when they do EFAP on different content creators, YouTube video essays and such, they will do this kind of work in addition to talking about the argument. So I feel like he would appreciate well-reasoned and well-articulated critiques of his work, especially if you are clearly denoting where you're having a problem and what you're having a problem on.
And if he thinks your argument is bad, he'll call you a waffle in 3 different ways that feels more hurtful than anything else.
Okay, I can handle that. As I said,
Are
I
you
don't
sure?
know.
A convergence of events looking to intertwine all aspects of the Force, her history, and the relationships both past and present. All of this because the only character I give a fuck about booped her off a cliff. Ahsoka.
Yeah, 100% logical one. The only character he cares about.
Tano will finally have to face her old math.
I mean, I'm not saying there isn't a matter of rhetoric here that is very appealing to people who hate new Disney. I can definitely feel how he could get people behind him, but I'm also pointing out how it would come off to people who actually like Disney.
The first 4 episodes were a clusterfuck of abysmal writing, with the primary disaster being a complete lack of anything close to...
Okay,
Right off
sorry,
from
pause.
the back,
Gosh, I want
that
to, yeah.
comes off very
Wait.
dismissive. You hype up these
Well-
two series. I would have led into giving Ahsoka the same treatment as.
Yeah, no. Agreed.
Okay, that's
Agreed.
horrible optic. And even if
yeah,
he does make the argument afterwards, you're a new person, or even not sure if you want to see Ahsoka. This is just bad.
Yeah, no. Like again, it's another point of feather or point in the column of this is not for general consumption. This is for his audience.
Yeah,
I
can
didn't
agree.
hate. The thing is, I did not like. There were actually parts of Ahsoka that are good. Like
I never watched it.
I like her. Like, okay, if you come in to Ahsoka looking at it as Rebels, like season 5, or the continuation of Rebels, it's less miserable because Hera was really good.
Well, he does have a certain point of comparison that I understand in this video, is why he used those 2 examples. But there's going into this like this, definitely bad optics, and definitely
Loses something.
It's gonna lose something, but his fans are gonna be like, "Yeah, right on."
Well, that begs a question. Is it a bad thing to make content specifically for your audience? Because that's what it sounds like the argument's pushing towards that you're making.
I think you need some beginners content, because getting into full blown
I think
MauLer,
as one of your shortest films, one of your easiest
your
videos
shortest
to get
videos,
into,
yeah.
people are going to judge you, going to be like, okay,
The-
2 hours, 3 hours. Oh, this one's is under an hour. Let me give this one a try. I think
Okay,
it's
'cause,
gonna be
like,
much better, longer form.
I gave
Especially-
MauLer a try based off of his wonderful title for what was it? It was for not the Last Jedi. It was one of the Star Wars films, and then I got halfway through that, and then it was like, oh, he did Doctor Strange. I didn't like Doctor Strange very much, so I was like,
Oh,
oh,
that's
cool, I'll
funny.
watch that.
So I found MauLer's content not at the beginning, but It was
But at the end.
it was in the EFAP was in the 20s.
Dang, that was
what
like
is
a
it?
year ago or more.
What? No, this
How
is like
long ago was that?
2018.
Jeez, I was a
No,
completely different person back then.
Yeah. Something like that. It was when Endgame had just came out,
Okay.
and I remember that I hadn't seen Endgame, so I didn't want to watch their coverage of it. But they were talking with ER.
Okay.
It was the first time ER had been on EFAP, and that
Okay.
I had caught up on a bunch of MauLer's content by then. I'd found EFAP by then, but that was like the as I was watching MauLer's content and all of their content, really, that was the EFAP that had just came out. That's where I came in.
Esther once again. She will complete her training and come to understand there is quite the journey ahead.
You look the same.
You look old.
Well, that happens.
Yes, this is definitely her completing her training. As badly as it is done, that is the attempt behind this stupid little afterlife delusional sequence that she goes through.
Okay, so if you don't know, Dave Filoni writes dialogue about as well as Ryan Johnson writes whodunits.
Just dumb.
So as much as this shit clunks harder than adamantium anal beads, we're going to try and work through to the point this episode has to make.
It means you still have a chance.
Chance.
To live.
So Ahsoka is here, and she's dying. Interesting, since all three characters I've been referencing are essentially comatose in their respective stories.
Live or die.
We are then treated to witnessing a great battle in the Clone Wars. I was able to figure this out because of the incredible visuals, not at all because of the zombie pisshat dialogue.
This is the Clone Wars!
Anakin tells Ahsoka,
Yes. Selective use of really cringy dialogue here. I will agree. That isn't something that should be told. If she's being aware and not being meta, she should be saying this is a certain planet or a certain battle and not the Clone Wars. Seems like something out of a checklist that people would put on. You have to include lines like supposedly Transformers, the top 10 lines you want in the Transformer movies, and that gets put into the movie.
that as a leader, she will have to make decisions that bring about people's deaths, and that to win the war, you have to be a soldier.
Is that all I'll have to teach my own Padawan one day?
So, Ahsoka is sad that death is a common part of the Jedi, or soldier, or warrior experience. Doesn't it suck that the fate of her Padawan is violence and death? Perhaps it's worth throwing in the towel instead. Strange that she would have this perspective when this is adult Ahsoka.
See, MauLer's making the assumption that this is her perspective. Frankly, there's not enough in this to really tell you that. And I'll agree, it is a mess. So when you have something you'll admit is very messy writing with very ham-fisted and vague symbology worked into it, you think you can trust it? I'm not saying that's a good thing about this particular scene, that you can't trust it, but assuming you know that that is what her concern is in this moment seems a little flawed to me, and definitely would come off bad optically to anyone who disagrees with you.
Reliving child Ahsoka's memory, meaning she is a person who has completed many campaigns, being motivated to save people's lives. She's not actually young nor inexperienced, because that is the point of the world between worlds, right? Soldiers dying and killing enemies in favor of preventing mass
Yes, that I really don't know why he's calling this the world between worlds. You can't figure it out. Just be like this goddamn afterlife mess, this vague mess of where she's at.
Death is a pretty straightforward concept that I figure she understood and valued. Teaching a Padawan to engage in a life like that could be considered quite the positive thing. They may prevent mass suffering, something I figure she knew.
I'm teaching you how to lead, how to survive. To do that, you're going to have to fight.
What if I want to stop fighting?
And you'll die.
If you don't fight,
And yes, why the show up to this point definitely does not explicitly say that she's having concerns about teaching her Padawan, although her status as a Jedi itself is very vague, which definitely seems to bother a lot of critics out there, and I can actually understand those concerns. There is some truth to the actual semblance that there is a lot of feel from the gray Jedi at this point in the series, and it's not really introduced into the series, so it's almost like they want the gray, but they're not calling Ahsoka or even Baylan gray Jedis, but they have a very gray feel to them.
You die. Seemingly a very weak version of similar stories, considering how little there is to prompt this. I had no clue Ahsoka was giving up. Where was any of this in the previous episodes, and why was this prompted by Baylan talking about death and destruction? Those lines are repeated in the previously on.
Your legacy, like your master's, was one of death and destruction.
She apparently...
I don't know why MauLer's hyper-focusing on the death and destruction part, when it's really more him bringing up the master, Anakin. That seems to be the primary focus here. I don't know if it's my misreading or MauLer's misreading here, so I'm going to try to be fair there. But I don't know why his hyperfixation on that particular line.
Apparently took that criticism so seriously she's now contemplating suicide in the form of simply giving up. I doubt anything we've heard from Anakin so far is new to her, nor would it be anything that would encourage her to live or die in this scenario, but then I have no idea why she would want to die.
It was my fault. They were following my orders. I got them killed.
This is war, so
Rest. Warriors rest. There definitely seems to be a focus on Warrior's presence in the series. There's several little tidbits that almost seems like, wouldn't say stealing, but definitely borrowing from Eastern philosophy. The sort of top knot removal. There was one scene that gave me a very strong suggestion of a samurai cutting off his top knot and sort of becoming a Ronin or a hired mercenary.
okay. As Jedi, it's our job to lead.
Ahsoka is apparently having a crisis in which she thinks all she seems to do is add to a path of destruction and death, likely fueled by her tutelage from Anakin, being Darth Vader. Perhaps that is her future too, so why not give up? Something...
Yeah, I mean, it's not explicit, but it's definitely a concern, given her master, how she didn't finish her training. How can she really go in and teach a Padawan anything of value? Will she turn out like Anakin? Yes, not directly said. I wish this was actually done much better in this. I see the intent behind it to do minimalistic, and some of the dialogue sort of undercuts the sort of more stoic reading of Ahsoka and a lot of these warrior characters. So that would be my main criticism. They definitely are going for the stoic warriors with Ahsoka and a lot of these characters, but the dialogue just does not freaking fit with any of it. That would be my main thing. But you need to actually read the intent of the piece to really be able to determine sort of how it is processed. A really fair reading going in. And even if you give a very fair reading, a good faith sort of read into it, and you can qualify it later on with, I can tell this is what the writer, director, whoever you're talking about is going for this, and how they fail at that. That is a much better process than I see going on, at least in this particular video. There's a factor of entertainment that I think is happening in criticism. The entertaining factor seems to be triumphing the sort of good faith reading and sort of the communication between fans of stuff and serious critics like MauLer are. Zero stoicism. I don't know about that. You would have to make that argument. There's definitely a lot of warrior-like values in here. The sort of training sequence between the blind swordsman sort of thing. Yeah, it's sort of also playing off of the whole thing with Luke putting down the visor of Obi-Wan, but it's extended out much further to the master-student relationship between the two, which I think has a certain appeal to it. Definitely has an Eastern feel to it.
She's currently trying to save the galaxy and by extension her Padawan and close friend, only she lost a fight to this literal who. She knows this guy about as well as the audience does. Still the best character though. I have no clue why now of all times would have her reaching an existential crisis regarding her place in the world and her legacy as a destructive force when she's pretty much been a paragon in everything we've seen of her.
So he's putting Ahsoka in a box. He figures he knows Ahsoka, so he knows how she should act better than the writer, it seems like. Okay, fair enough. Not going to say the characterization and the flanderization of these characters are not rampant, and having a cynical attitude towards it is understandable. Maybe this is just very one-sided, and along with the really generous reading MauLer gives to both Futurama and Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, this seems very unfair in comparison when you're seeing them back to back.
She's more motivated now than ever to do the right thing. She is on the cusp of preventing the reignition of the Empire, and she's concerned about her actions leading to death. Her inaction will lead to way more death, as well as the danger of herself and her close friends. You can't just drop this arc on her out of nothing, and you certainly can't do it with about 4 sentences. But this is where it gets complicated.
What is he assuming Ahsoka is? Is a machine? Not human? Yeah, she's definitely portrayed as a cocky, know-it-all, can get my way through any situation, both from what I know of the Clone Wars, didn't actually watch Rebels. I'm saying just taking the series as a whole from episode 1 to this episode, what's the reading you get of her? There's definitely different factors you can sort of plug and play in here.
Nobody is agreeing on what the fuck Anakin's lesson even is, especially between those who love the episode. I've read their interpretations. It's the equivalent of a blender of Star Wars flavored cope. Don't die, live is the takeaway, but many are digging a hell of a lot deeper because Filoni has left this incredibly confusing and vague. People
I will agree. There's some vagaries and probably some symbolism that's going to be lost on people. A live or die thing. It really is good comparison to sort of what he brought up with Fry telling Leela to wake up, and definitely comes out of nowhere. Now you have to make some assumptions based on the actual what you know from what happened to her to where she's found, that she is probably going to die if she doesn't get any help, and so she's trying to find the will. And I'm sort of losing my thought there.
That Ahsoka feels responsible for the deaths Anakin caused, as she did not prevent his fall, meaning it's time she...
Yeah, that is a very stupid interpretation that is not supported by the text of the film. Some people who don't have that interpretation, you highlighting that will make them think, okay, that doesn't represent me. I like Ahsoka, and I didn't have that reading. So are you trying to lump us all in one category or not?
Gives up? If she had such enormous concerns about these sorts of events and decisions, then why has she been such an active participant in this form of activity without hesitation for so long? Where has this attitude been? Not only are we now heavily writing for the writer to squeeze meaning into this anorexic script,
and you're not taking any consideration for potentially the underlying concern she would have. When you're in a conflict, you feel like you're forced to move. This is sort of a side break, assuming that she is sort of dying, and definitely isn't conveyed very well in this of what place it is. My reading always has been that this is sort of like near-death experiences in the Star Wars universe. Instead of God, you're connected to the Force. And this is her chance to sort of seek closure from a master she hasn't been around in 30 years. And she's a little bit off-put by how out of place this is. But yeah, the dialogue does do a rather bad job of conveying that impression of mine. And I'm not going to actually say that's the actual intent of the writer. I'm not going to assume that it isn't the intent, just because fans have their little theories.
Has nothing to do with why she wouldn't want to live, and it doesn't address what she would know about Anakin. Why in the fucking world would this be dealt with now as opposed to when she found out about Vader? Why wouldn't you wait to prompt this when she goes through something very similar? Leela believed she got a crew member killed. Buffy believed she failed her duty and killed her sister. That's why their journeys were prompted. Ahsoka believes what? That people get hurt in wars where she gives orders? That
Okay, some additional context that MauLer really leaves out. What happened before Ahsoka got pushed off the cliff? Her Padawan, someone very underminingly. Well, first of all, she gets the impression from Balin's Padawan or whatever. Names aren't really my suit, so Balin and Ahsoka is the best I'm going to be able to do here. That she killed the Padawan. And there was even a hint of emotion in the normally stoic, could have been much betterly conveyed. And stoic isn't probably the correct term, but I do believe that is the sort of feel they want to give with Ahsoka. She felt that she killed the Padawan. You could see that even in the stilted acting, that there was some concern. Then she popped up. You see a hint of relief from Ahsoka. Maybe I saw something that isn't there, but frankly, I don't think I have the bias against it. So I tried to go with an unbiased aspect and really tried to look at that scene really critically as I went in. Mostly unbiased impression of that scene there.
that people will eventually get hurt if she doesn't give up, that she's responsible for the people Anakin killed, that she may become as destructive as Vader, that Sabine is simply fated to become as destructive and death-ridden as everyone else in this line of training. And what? This was prompted?
Okay, maybe I shouldn't cut off MauLer here, but he cuts off people all the time. But yes, I think the reading of her becoming like Anakin is definitely a concern of Ahsoka. This is why you have the Vader flash. Of course, you know, the member berries thing, that is good to factor in, but you can have one thing do two separate actions. It can be both for the member berries and to convey Ahsoka's own fear that she's going to walk the same path her master has walked before. And that is definitely my reading. And it's a little hard to support that overall with solid evidence because of the vagueness of this.
By falling off a cliff? Why are you showing me that she feels bad for the clones that died under her command, as though that justifies her belief that she brings death everywhere she goes and thus should die herself? Are we
See the misreading of MauLer sometimes for the compassion? There was the only solid criticism I really did in my little MauLer video was the fact MauLer had this weird convention that somehow Finn felt compassion for his fellow stormtroopers when nothing in that movie actually supports that impression of MauLer's. I don't understand how he gets some impressions that he does, that the clone trooper represented something, her anxieties. She's in the moment. She's wiser, even if it is an illusion. Maybe it's a part of herself. Consoling someone in need is something, even if they are not real, is worth doing sometimes.
we not talking about the lives saved, the places liberated, or the goods served? This was no mistake made based on her own flaws as a character. Does she have no understanding of the context of death? As far as I can tell, we're using clones because there's actually no other reference to force Ahsoka to have this arc. Nobody who died due to her own vice.
See, I'm not even sure what he's trying to say there. Use the clones because there's no other. There was her Padawan, okay, who definitely was left in a really bad place when she got knocked off the cliff. Ahsoka told her Padawan to destroy the map. Think out those ramifications. The Padawan destroys the map. She's probably going to die. No bargaining chip. She knew she was probably going to condemn the person who apparently she betrayed in the past and had a falling out with, condemning her to die based on the greater good. Now, it's not in the script, and it should have been much more well conveyed in the sort of scene if it was that sort of thing. So MauLer, make a suggestion. Instead of having that clone trooper, maybe you could have had her deal with some civilians in the past with the wrecked home. I don't know if that would have fit the scene. Maybe it wasn't a concern. Maybe they wanted to just do the member berries with the clone and try to say something about her changing as a person, because as MauLer's going to point out, she, or at least someone pointed out, supposedly past Ahsoka. I don't know. I didn't see that. Really, Clone Wars has been a while and didn't watch Rebels. Fault me for that. I just watched this series, and supposedly you can watch this series without going into the Clone Wars, but that's besides the point. Yes, the dream like interpretations of sort of the afterworld that Ahsoka goes into, why she's clearly dying in the real world. There is a lot of symbology there, like Anakin hurting Lash into Vader or not.
This is flaws or mistakes, and so this is nothing. There's nothing here for Ahsoka as a character to actually have to grapple with. She would never believe she is some destructive force, or that she may become one if she continues to fight when she's the only one right now.
See, I don't know what he's doing to support this logic. You make a statement like this. She would never do this. Why? Because, of course, Filoni wouldn't let her be a weak woman. It's like he doesn't want Ahsoka to have flaws. He wants Ahsoka to be the Mary Sue. And yes, I'll agree, this is probably too little too late overall. But within just this series, to have her have this moment, and she's probably not going to reflect on it again. And there's so much wrong going forward that probably is prompting this sort of rant here that he's probably leaving out. But since he's not actually saying, maybe I'm wrong, I've watched this too much, maybe I'm getting lost in the sauce.
Now who can make the difference and help. I mean, fuck, she's Filoni's little Star Wars god. She is the bestest and brightest, most wonderful and good character. Nobody is convinced that she was going to take her own life because she brings death to the world.
Again, it's not about taking her own life. That's letting herself rest and stop fighting. The stoicism. Again, probably wrong word, and it's even going funny on me. That sort of being displayed here is just completely harsh to say she would never. MauLer, oppression of Ahsoka. And, you know, MauLer's okay, let me not be mean. But he is just so certain and comes off as so confident. And I don't understand why. Maybe you have to watch a lot of his content about Ahsoka to really get the gist of this. Something I'm probably going to go into, but not really prepared to actually deal with, is his dealing with YMS over Critical Drinker. He steel mans the Critical Drinker rather hard with a lot of, I think. Now, I don't know why he's so confident in all these things. Didn't he used to criticize H Bomber Guy for sounding so confident? I'm not going to judge him too harshly, but definitely optically, it'll come off badly to those who think you're just a hater and you're going to look at the worst thing. I'm not going to make such assumptions. I'm just talking about optically and tactically. Because recently, I've been thinking a lot about this sort of content. Hell, sort of why I got into sort of this whole criticizing critics for arc that I've been going on to figure out sort of what's good faith criticism, what will come across to the audience, sort of fuck ups in that area. And I'm trying to learn from that and moving on. MauLer's been more successful and been doing this sort of content for much longer than me and a lot of people on YouTube. So you figure, especially with how he delegates things between people, he would understand how other people would perceive this sort of content here. Maybe he does. Maybe he's just mad. Don't know.
That's fucking retarded, especially when death is threatening the world and the people she loves. So why the fuck of all times would she be giving up now? Thrawn is on her doorstep. Everyone she loves needs her, and she has no significant reason to think she would lose.
Except for she just lost. And she, by all logical reason, condemned her Padawan to death. Maybe, you know, she hasn't fucked up her relationships. She's not a total loner. There's no established lore for that. There are emotional things with certain people you feel more vulnerable. Now, it's just a personal reading of mine. And, yeah, not right in the head canon, but maybe Ahsoka's taking this chance to get personal with Anakin. She doesn't know if this is really Anakin or not, but she's taking it as if it's definitely serious. He's treating whatever thing this is, spirit, hallucination, blah, 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 as if he's Anakin.
There you go. That's why we're here.
And there's probably a concern there. There is a little line that I did like among all the messy lines in the sort of flashbacks about Anakin making jokes, not being serious. And he sort of brings up the gallows humor. Another funny point is they sort of criticize people in the sort of EFAP covering this episode, criticizing Ahsoka and the general person for sort of lighthearted and making little light jokes among themselves, if you want to call them jokes or humor, gallows humor. After two of the I believe it's two of the pilots and X-fighters died in this. What they're not considering is the sort of a delay effect of a soldier. Soldiers sometimes in the heat of battle, and yeah, it's arguable to say if they were in the heat of battle between things, but they definitely had battles to come and things to do. So take solace in the small moments. I didn't see that as such a bad thing. And yes, soldiers get used to people dying in battle. They know when and where to take their moments to mourn for their lost brothers and sisters and arms. And didn't seem like any of the EFAP crew when I covered it really took that factor in consideration. Maybe it's just my sort of perspective on media criticism that the psychology of the characters, even if you think the writers didn't take sort of the writing characters seriously, just assuming that they're just fucking around and just treating the audience like idiots is a bad assumption.
To see Anakin Skywalker crossing over into Vader, igniting a red lightsaber, looking evil. Cause that shit is awesome. That shit is Star Wars.
Live or die. Incorrect.
Seriously, just have him say nothing at this point. It would be better.
I actually almost agree. They really do need to cut down on the stupid dialogue. Definitely would work better. Sort of the live and die aspect, I do not know what they got in their head with that. Maybe they just thought it sounded cool, or it's some sort of proxy for, dark side or light side. Because there is a oppression here that MauLer doesn't bring up. He hinted to it.
Jesus, what hell cringe is dribbling onto my screen? Get out of this fucking universe, you Vader-obsessed wannabe shitwits. It's the breathing, the red lightsaber, the fucking outfit, every goddamn time. You cannot tell a fucking story that doesn't revolve around the same fight.
And this is from a video called Star Wars Can't Grow Up. I'm sure many of the fans who's got to at least this point in it is like, this dude needs to grow up. I mean, I understand the optics of this, the emotion. I'm not going to shame MauLer for this, but I'm sure other people will mock him for this. Other people, it's a us versus them mentality. And MauLer's definitely fallen into that sort of mindset with a video like this. He falls into it with his little group on EFAP also, probably even harder. But it seems, and I think that does translate to the audience, but not going to get into that sort of rabbit hole just yet. As I said, I'm going to have a lot of hot takes and probably a lot of criticism if I don't just get outright ignored by a lot of people. But you know what? Do what I do. MauLer does what he does.
5 people in this piss stain of a universe. And why, on top of everything, must I watch these icons of Star Wars deliver the fucking dialogue equivalent of rotting clown semen?
Time to die.
Fuck me, I guess they brought in Hayden Christensen not just for the member berries, but because they needed an expert in delivering emaciated, thudding, ass cream dialogue.
Liar!
I choose to live.
Okay, so like she chooses to live, meaning that Ahsoka was considering choosing to die because her path is that of death and destruction, and Vader because making Anakin fight her. She's now choosing to live. She's going to fight to live where others failed, where her master went to the dark side or something. I don't know.
There's hope for you yet.
Then through some...
Yes, you don't know. That is an important takeaway. You don't know, but you're just annoying us all as just consume more, as Red Letter Media says. And there is definitely a certain sense of that, even among someone who's trying to stay unbiased and trying to give some good faith to Ahsoka. I can still admit the failings of it where it pops up. Should I do that? Add to the mess? Who knows? Everyone has their niche, and I'm trying to figure out. I have a different niche. It's more about trying to figure out where miscommunications among audience creators and all that fun parasocial bullshit really comes about.
Bullshit mechanics I'm not even going to bother talking about. She's fished out of drowning and jumps into a whale and travels to Thrawn. This episode...
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't focus more on the ridiculousness of her drowning there. Frankly, I don't see how that goes. Okay. Her almost drowning, I think, how the mechanics of that. She falls, gets pushed down. Does she float for a while? Or when they discover her, she's like a few feet underground. So logically, if you're being good faith and saying mechanically how it would work, assuming she wasn't teleported to an extra dimensional place, is that she floated for a bit and not drowned, assuming her species can't breathe underwater, which I assume they cannot, but maybe I'm wrong there. Got to admit where you don't know certain things or not. But yes, the mechanics of that actually is more implausible. And given the vagueness, definitely worth criticism. But this one-sided, sort of lopsided discussion around this is gonna turn people off.
Episode was simultaneously packed with worthless bullshit and crushed at the moments of anything meaningful trying to claw its way onto the screen. The time-wasting signature of Dave Filoni is alive and well. He takes incredible resources and lets them spill across the floor with no more purpose in delivery than a drunken octopus tossing darts at a board of emotional illusion. All in favor of telling a completely out of nowhere just to go nowhere for the explicit seconds of fan service and distraction from just how little substance remains in this dilapidated prolapsing franchise that people have the ball.
Is this going to be the NPC talking point, Gray? Not stoic, sir. Sorry, I see a sense of maybe it's poorly executed, but there's definitely a sense of Eastern stoicism within this. Again, might not be the correct words, and considering they're Jedi Knights, it might be mixing the West and East in a rather badly way. But you know what? Glad you guys are go with your NPC talking points. It's really good for discourse, but still funny. Touche, touche.
To call genius in execution.
Hey, Filoni, you utter genius.
One of the best shots in Star Wars history. Argue with a wall. Hashtag Ahsoka. Hashtag Anakin. What if I want to stop fighting? Then you'll die. The Vader silhouette. I'm so unwell. Hashtag Ahsoka Tano. Hashtag Tano Tuesday. Hashtag Anakin Skywalker. If Dave Filoni...
This is fucking annoying as all hell to me, okay? This just seems like mockery material. Look at these idiots just finding this stuff so awesome. Yes, they're idiots on Twitter, okay? They're going with the hashtags and all this bullshit to, get the virtue signal points. And you know what? Sort of putting them on display in a YouTube video and mocking them. It's the same exact thing. Beautiful stuff. So mature, MauLer.
He could be nominated for any of his shots. It's this one. Hashtag Ahsoka spoilers. Someone pointed out how Anakin is surrounded by people and friends, and instead Vader is all alone.
What the fuck did you notice about the shots before noticing that?
I can't stop thinking about this scene. Hashtag Anakin Skywalker, hashtag Darth Vader.
Yeah, these shots aren't very good. Okay. That's one of the better ones. The other one, sorry, it looks like ass. I can understand the intent of it, but fanboys are going to be fanboying, but yeah, figures. Only good thing about having an actual audience is definitely having audio. Well, that's lovely stuff. Oh, well. I'll have to put together something proper for this, but I was intending to do that anyways after my whole session. So,
Tano Tuesday hashtag Star Wars. Whoever thought to merge Anakin's regular voice with Vader's cyborg voice when saying, "You lack conviction," deserves a raise. This was spine tingling. Hashtag Star Wars. Hashtag AHSOKA. This is probably the best shot I have ever seen in Star Wars.
What is so fucking good about it? Is it that he's a good man and that he's Anakin? But oh no, he's a bad man too, and there's Vader. Oh, Ahsoka sees him as both Anakin the Master and the good man, but oh no, she sees him as Vader the bad man.
Dave FILONI needs to be kept on by Disney for life. Hashtag Ahsoka. Siege of MANDALORE. Did not know you had this in you, Dave Filoni. Hashtag Ahsoka. Dave Filoni writing the script for episode 5 of hashtag Ahsoka Tano. Clearly Favreau and Filoni know how to include legacy characters in ways that actually serve the story and drive the plot forward. Folded hands, I trust them. To label these as fan service is to miss the point of their role entirely.
harping on all the fanboys. Such a productive use of a critic's time. I swear, this just, I don't know why MauLer would sink to this level. Yeah, he's trying to make a point, but it says absolutely nothing about media. And it's just disappointing. You can bring up a few points of fanboys, but just absolute deluge of this video does not make me think MauLer's mature. Yeah, I still think Star Wars has a lot of problems with it, but there are much more mature ways to say that Star Wars cannot grow up. I mean, is this supposed to be ironic or something? I can't even tell. This isn't one of his Goodell's. This isn't even labeled as one of his unbridled videos. So this is a beast altogether. Maybe it's just fed up. I can understand that, but I just really don't understand this.
Hashtag Ahsoka, hashtag Anakin Skywalker, hashtag The Mandalorian, hashtag Luke Skywalker. Wait a minute, we sure we don't want Dave Filoni to give us a Clone Wars movie. Loudly crying. Hashtag Ahsoka. Anakin and Ahsoka with Sith eyes, fire, 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 Dave Filoni. Okay, so it's agreed that episode 5 of Ahsoka is the best thing Disney has done with Star Wars, period, right? Like this was peak Star Wars.
Star Wars is fucked. If you skip this episode, Ahsoka simply needed to chase the bad guys inside a whale, which is fucking retarded in and of itself. Her existential crisis came from...
Maybe it is retarded, but from what I've seen, that's sort of the setup they gave it in Rebels. Really not changing something from Rebels that was established there and reuse the asset and set it up in this new series. Yeah, I find it a little cringe, but you got to meet the media for where it is. And for this, it seems to have the context to back up the Star Whales thing. As stupid it is. At least it's consistency.
Nothing and is resolved with ease in minutes. The idea that this is one of her most important character episodes and all of the context to understand it is apparently from countless seasons of other TV shows. That's absolutely embarrassing. Regardless, Ahsoka is and will...
What was that statement even? From other TV shows? He just is devolving in communications here. A short piece to sort of rant, maybe.
Be no different from before to after this event in how Rosario Dawson portrays her, because she has been portraying her as a dissatisfied brick in key emotional moments of this series already. Except now she's wearing white clothing because that's the only fucking thing they know how to do. This is peaks.
See, also, yes, she's wearing white. It's a typical trope. Yeah, tropes. Probably hate them. Okay, the good guy. This conveys the sort of that she finally got her final lesson from her master. Lame as that is, that's sort of what was the purpose of that. The lesson, I don't think it was a very good lesson. The only lesson I could take from it is Anakin tried to piss her off and get her to an angry point. Sort of, it was very reminiscent and probably a lot more filler nonsense filled than the sort of scene where Luke goes into the cave and fights Vader and sort of kills him. Cuts off the head. That stupid scene there. And when Luke chose in Return of the Jedi to not kill her father, I'm using the wrong pronoun. Pronoun police were going to come get me. But yes, them coming for Vader, not killing Vader, was a point that showed, yes, that was the test. What was all the fluff before then? I don't know. Maybe it was supposed to be a touching reunion, but it falls flat because it falls flat for some people because some people were just confused about a lot of things or dismissive. And I can understand it. It wasn't set up well. It was hokey. I really hated this effect to sort of try to portray that they were in some sort of dream-like setting. But you can recognize the intent of the filmmakers and say it's bad at the same time. You don't have to diminish this and act all confused and sort of be an asshole about it. That's not the way to convince these fanboys. This video definitely isn't about convincing the opposition that Star Wars needs to grow up. This is just mocking the fans and the show rather one-sidedly, and that seems rather disappointing from what I know about MauLer. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Very disappointing.
Star Wars. Peak Star Wars is Dave Filoni discovering CGI smoke, a visual that can barely be accredited to him before Jon Favreau, before Gareth Edwards, before, well, ain't it fucking depressing to know just how stale these ideas are? Anakin and the world between worlds annihilates what we understand to be his relationship with Luke and raises more questions than the fucking hyperspace kamikaze. Is this Anakin? Is this fragments of his life through time brought together to reach out to Ahsoka? Is this Ahsoka's vision of him? Is this a photocopy of him from a particular era? Is this a Force ghost? Is this a combination of the lot? You understand that the meaning of everything coming from his end changes dramatically depending on the answer. Luke Skywalker should be incredibly relevant to this whole series, but for some reason we're pretending like this isn't a time where he would be most active in the universe. He would be hell-bent on stopping any Empire loyalists from resurrecting the regime and the war. He's not a worthless...
Does this come back to his hatred for The Last Jedi again? I can't help but feel that in reality. It's just going off on a tantrum. This is what it will come across to a lot of people who aren't in your fan base, MauLer. You're going to get steel claps from everyone who agrees with you. You're going to get hate from people who disagree with you. And people who are neutral, depending on their disposition, will either be like, that is rather base, MauLer. Yeah, you go get Ahsoka, girl. This time I did misgender MauLer on purpose. You know, you go, girl. But that's besides the point. For some people who are looking into criticism and want a good argument, this video is not a good argument. Okay, this is not convincing anything. Asking questions, saying, I don't know what this is. You can say that. Be like, okay, if you wanted to do this one way, this is what I would have gone with. This way. MauLer used to, if he didn't like a scene, he would go through and sort of lay out how the scene could be done to achieve a certain effect. And this isn't an unbridled rage or, as I said, just the effect. He should just left out all the... I just don't know what he was thinking with this. The lopsided nature of the praises along with this sort of rage out seems like an oddity that doesn't make sense to me and seems to be just an odd optical choice to make.
Titty-sucking hobo yet. There are countless coming events that Anakin needs to tell Ahsoka about. There are countless pieces of information that he could have given her. Hera should be fucking fired for getting 2 men killed while dragging a child into an active war zone on an unsanctioned batshit...
And the moralizing of MauLer. For Christ's sakes, those 2 men were soldiers, and she probably should suffer. And them saying Leia wouldn't have sanctioned this. What the hell does MauLer know about Leia? His sort of a caricature of Leia. What does she feel about the New Republic? We don't know. She could have been very disillusioned from them real quick. This is why she wasn't among the ranks of the senators. There is a clear dynamic early on that these senators just came in afterwards and are being pretty much what politicians are. Politicians. And the actual soldiers are actual soldiers. So I also thought it was a little odd bringing the child in. There is some sort of sense to it, but on the other hand, does it excuse the sort of, speed racer, Chim Chim and the kid hiding in the trunk or something like that? Maybe if he would have stole away on it, it would have worked much better and the mother would have had to deal with it. and been like, and there would have been an actual reason the child would have investment to find the father, which is why this whole thing sort of set out. Context actually freaking matters. But no, you know what? Reduce it to its basic parts. Reduce it to how you feel about it and how you feel these characters should be portrayed. Snap judgments based on your own perception, your own theories about, frankly, I don't know what Leia would have done here. She, yeah, there's a line. She can only provide cover for so much longer. My impression from that is that she feels that the New Republic government didn't take the proper care to root out the remnants of the Empire. And everything that I've seen in the Star Wars universe sort of support, and even The Force Reawakens sort of was the comeuppance of the government not taking care of an actual threat. Is it stupid? Abso-fucking-lutely. Okay, but this is the problem with working in this established space. Just like with Obi-Wan, when he should have killed Vader, but he couldn't have killed Vader. So why fucking do that? Why fucking have that encounter? Has there been any serious encounters here? And he keeps bringing up Ahsoka should know. Yeah, I don't know. I did not remember that scene. Been too long. Maybe I wiped Ahsoka's meeting with Luke from my memory. Maybe I didn't watch it. I've been in and out trying to check on it every so often. This, why not good, does seem like improvement. And I'm not going to praise it and say it's great, but if you see a marginal improvement, maybe it's a downgrade for Andor. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a harsh reading because it's using the established characters instead of using a whole batch. I even agree. They should explore other areas of Star Wars. They should have actually used another season of Visions to sort of get a proper feel for what the fans want to see more outside of the mainline stories, more indoors. And you basically have some really good directors. There's a number of flaws there, but there's also a number of benefits that could really help you out overall with using that sort of thing. Is Disney going to be smart enough to do that? Probably not. But given Disney and fans practical solutions to sort of improve the fandom, I can't really say. I'm not really part of this fandom anymore. I sort of checked out after The Force Awakens, had some really good help, but I'm not going to let my emotions for the sort of IP going to lead me on to this thing. I can move on, and I feel bad for people who can't move on from the decaying ship of Star Wars. But I believe with a little bit of background, not as much as the super fans who watch all this stuff to either criticize or praise it, don't know about any of that. But I believe it gives me a certain amount of perspective. Being a former fan, still a fan of the old stuff, and coming back in and out. Maybe MauLer needs to take a break from Star Wars. Who knows? Too immediate flesh wound. I don't know.
Crazy mission. Sabine should be stripped of her armor and lightsaber before she facilitates the victory for the Empire once again in future by being a bratty fucking idiot. Also, she should have died like 17 times by now. And you know what? The worst of it is the...
Okay, how should she died? They actually did not actually do the thing where she gets stabbed through the spine. It was a clear gut wound. That was the one scene I'm like, okay, at least it doesn't look like a fatal wound. They're not trying to do a fake me out. Should the chick followed up with the lightsaber attack? Probably. But I think she was in a hurry to get out. So a certain amount of persistence. I think that's just unfair. I mean, what other time should have she died? Doesn't make sense. She shouldn't have died there. I think the robot waiting for her was a much more stupid thing that managed to let them track them a little bit more. the Ahsoka going to her little hut out in the middle of thing and just happen to find one of the droids, which, you know, after a false sort of tense-filled moment, oh, is it going to blow up or not? Oh, it almost blowed up, but it didn't. That was a lot more lamer than sort of her almost death there. See, it's priorities. I have different priorities. Okay, I find different issues, but I still find problems in this. You can still say what you believe is good. When you just go one-sided, harping on it, you're not going to improve the fandom. That's all I'm saying. Bad tactics. Maybe it's a good target, but definitely bad tactics and horrible optics.
The plot. The show is almost entirely plot. Plot, fucking plot. What little character there is amounts to...
Isn't that better than some things? There is worse things to have. And yeah, make fun of me. Stoic. Let's make this a meme, kids. The stoicism. Especially since I fuck it up half the time I say it. Stoicism of the characters in Ahsoka is rather disappointing. It's, in my book, it is passable, but still, I would like to see better character writing. But at least you do have some strong framework. You have the Padawan being trained in a rather okay sequence. I want to probably give it more praise, but the sort of blind swordsman training Ahsoka does with her Padawan, I'm going to bother with a lot of these stupid names that I'll probably forget in a couple of days anyways. Not worth the mental effort. But yes, there was a couple of moments that I appreciated the show. And then the cringy dialogue is just like, oh God. They needed much better dialogues. But George Lucas set such a stellar standard for great dialogue writing. Horrible trope to sort of emulate.
I'm a general, fuck off. I'm confused, but I like Ezra, fuck off. And finally, I crossed my arms like in the cartoon, now drool for me. For fuck's sake. This video explored 3 episodes.
Yeah, it was still just mocking the pathetic little crybabies who just like break down at the slightest little memberberry reference, key jangling bullshit. I don't know the utility of sort of a mocking these sort of women children. I don't know what to call them, but yeah, I don't see the utility, the media utility of putting in the mocking. You can use them as displays of sort of people who don't think critically. But when you harp on them so much, it just comes off as mean-spirited. Why I can take that with a grain of salt. I can also put myself outside as someone who maybe saw all these qualities and actually try to keep an open mind and watch this video. And this is one of MauLer's shorter videos. I cut it down, but it's like 45 minutes long.
Episodes of television. Episodes where our main character is locked in an otherworldly state thinking about how her legacy is.
I do believe it is because she was sort of a not really a Jedi because she didn't complete her training under Anakin and sort of went off and did her own thing. And after her sort of near-death sort of exposure to Anakin, that's when she started wearing white. And so I read that as someone with a background in some film studies, like old Westerns, which Star Wars has sort of gone after. Good guys wore white, bad guys wore dark colors. And so, yeah, the white definitely came across to me. And I can't believe that that was picked just completely accidental for this. The show was not executed well. Pacing, act, and dialogue right, and saber damage. I might agree with you overall, Gray. I'm not actually making an argument that the show's great. I saw certain signs, like with the sort of training between Ahsoka and her Padawan. I saw some potential in that. There's other little tidbits I would have to go back through and sort of go into introspection. Yeah, the dialogue was god awful. I don't completely agree about the saber fights, but I think I know what you mean with that. Payson had an artistic perspective to it. They could have been more focused on trying to get a more woman audience, and that could contribute to the artsiness aspect and what most people perceive as poor pacing, which I would agree with overall, but I can't understand why they sort of, if they were going after more of a female audience, given a lot of the female cast, which some people probably criticize just that on its own, it does make sense. But even under that context, the pacing probably was a little bit off.
Is death, that she should simply give up, only to realize she is wrong.
I don't even know about the acting. I'm always iffy on the acting stuff also. Sometimes it's sort of the directing of the actors that are the problem in this. Hard to tell with someone like Rosanne Dawson. She might be big enough that she has some say in how her characters portray, or maybe it's the director's fault with that. But as I said, I saw some decent, subtle acting in the sort of fight with Balin when she thought her Padawan was potentially killed, and basically a small amount of relief when she saw she was alive. But I was really trying to pay attention to those things. As just someone going along, not very critically taken on, I know you might miss some of those things.
Escaping that loop and fighting hard to get back to the world of the living. 2 episodes were from 2 of my favorite television shows of all time. Shows featuring characters that are essentially trapped within their own thoughts, feelings, memories, and flaws. They spend the runtime discovering more about their own lives, motivations, values, and interpersonal dynamics than the total character development on display in all seasons of all Star Wars TV shows put together.
Yeah, this seems incredibly dismissive. Yeah, maybe he's a little sad. Maybe this is just a backlash because he saw a lot of potential in Andor, and this was a backtrack. I can understand the disappointment. As I said before, they should sort of go outside the sort of main line because they're rather confined, and there will be questions like, what was Ahsoka doing during The Last Jedi? It just creates a sort of cognitive dissonance at least fans who want that. And when you set it outside, you introduce new characters, maybe have a cameo of someone coming along, for the key jangling for those sort of people. You can do that effectively. Like, even though Anakin popping in, everyone's just saying member berries and it's waste. I don't feel that way. Maybe a little bit tropey, a little bit lame, but I think it was a well-used insert of that within a rather flawed series overall. But yeah, I think he's given about Futurama, because Futurama's had some real stinkers, and that's before even the return. There's some really strong Futurama episodes. Same as acting with Buffy, okay? You can find stinkers among them, and they aren't trying to. They went with the not sitcom formula. They went with that, seasonal arc formula where you were building up to a seasonal big bad, along with, villain of the week or hijinks of the week. And freaking there was no progression in Futurama. The emotional impact one episode had generally did not translate to the next episode. That one, they're really not compatible, I think. I do understand the comparison between them, but I still think it will come off a little bit odd to certain people. It comes off odd to me. I can come to terms with it, but still.
side of the good one, of course. The characters are treated with great respect, and they each have realizations, all ranging from intense horror, motivated senses of purpose and responsibility, all the way over to love and relief that will go on to change everything they understand about the world and themselves.
Okay, great. How could have Ahsoka done any of this? How does it disrespect? I do agree completely. They don't have the emotional ranges, but there's a certain amount of context that actually makes it it does actually make it acceptable, but it really should have been directed or acted better to sort of convey the sort of military mindset. In reality, Ahsoka works really well within what they want to do. It's the other characters that really throw off that sort of hardened soldier feel that it seems they want to go for, but fail to do it completely. Oh, okay. Let me be more fair. They don't fail to do it completely, just mostly fail. Okay. It's a generous way. No, it's not generous. That's probably the best way to frame it.
Prompted by incredibly dramatic events that will stick with them forever, regarding insecurities and flaws they've been dealing with since the beginning. They are absolute bangers of character exploration and share a very surprising amount in terms of structure and execution, despite the...
And yet when they spend some time giving Ahsoka a sort of a existential crisis, as MauLer puts out, I would say a sort of a weariness of constant life of battle. That's how I get more of a reading of that, of constant conflict and losing people and having issues with people due to the decisions you have to make to do the best thing you feel that you need to do in your line of duty. That sort of perspective there.
fact that we have here a supernatural horror drama and an animated comedy, and these are far from the only examples of writers who belt out absolute beasts of storytelling with this format. It's the impressive power of that craft. It's why we remember them. Ahsoka, much like mostly anything Disney produces these days, is a fucking blight on storytelling. It's dragging down every last aspect while using the very few easy elements it's familiar with to blind its audience as much as possible, to manipulate using nostalgia, and to dissuade anyone from noticing the hollow, desolate, creative, bleached bones of the storytelling beneath. It's pretending to be a story. It's incredible how much those who love the episode disagree as to what it's about, adding all kinds of content that absolutely wasn't there beyond an evil eye glance or glitchy fucking Vader visual. The episode plays at the idea of a woman who believes her legacy is death with no backing beyond her mentor having become Darth Vader.
Again, believe she's become death. He is overselling that idea of this. She's having her doubts if her life, midlife crisis, is a good example of this. Is Ahsoka not allowed a midlife crisis even near death, which she was at, no matter how poorly that was portrayed or displayed on the screen? A good faith reading would actually put this at a low point for her in a series where she seems unfazed by everything else. Sometimes the only relief a true soldier will get will be in death. Now, I understand why a lot of people have this oppression about Ahsoka, why this come off as so ham-fisted, but psychologically, from a psychological perspective on the type of character of Ahsoka, this makes sense to me. But it isn't provided. You more need to read between the lines to get the sort of reading I do. And I'm just wondering if some people just don't like reading between the lines, or if there's not enough between the lines and a lot of stuff that they just become doomers about. Yeah, Disney will never have subtle storytelling. So attributing any sort of storytelling is just, stupid. That's just my thing on that. I think it's just having a doomer, bad faith approach to this. again, I feel bad for those who are worn down by it. Sometimes people just need to walk away for a bit, take a break, and come back to it later with a more fresh, unbiased perspective. This is why I almost never review anything I have a strong current bias for. Yes, I might have a nostalgic blend for certain things, but in the case of Ahsoka, I barely watched the Clone Wars. I just got interested in this thanks to, a video addendum to this video, which I sort of argued with the creator about just the optics of this video. So I felt at least a little stream is warranted, and I'm probably not going to continue much longer. Made most of the points I wanted to, and all IJP Mexican.
Other than that, there's nothing in the writing or the performances in the entire season leading up to it. A conflict that lacks foundation when she should know about Vader's lasting legacy. A conflict that lacks focus because, unlike Buffy, she did not reach a moment of almost wanting a loved one to die to release her from responsibility. A conflict that cannot be less relevant when the universe hangs in the balance of Ahsoka being able to stop Thrawn. We play at the idea of her being on the cusp of death, of contemplating suicide because of her guilt and the desire to stop fighting in a world where she could.
Again, the framing of this as suicide is completely bonkers to me. Is just letting yourself drift away into that long goodbye suicide. The grand moralizing of EFAP, and really, I don't know if MauLer's like this moralistic trip, or if he's always been sort of on these sort of stupid little moralistic side tangents and these sort of really static images of characters not changing over time. Most people admit there is too much not to know about Ahsoka's life. They find a problem that we don't know this Ahsoka. We don't know what she's been doing for a lot of this time. And to assume, as MauLer said earlier, she's always been displayed as a paragon. She's supposed to be a static character, a Mary Sue, as he proclaims, I believe Dave Filoni. I don't even know these fucking names. As I said, I'm coming into this rather fresh and just reading the media as it is, instead of taking all the history of it. You might want to call it a flaw in my sort of analysis style. I think you should read the media for what it is, and then after the fact, try to make sense of why that media don't factor in all that past history, all that other stuff, because people do change. It's like MauLer has a really static image of people, both characters, writers, and it really comes across as, I don't want to keep repeating myself or be too dismissive of MauLer in this case, because he does have reasons to be doomer pilled on Star Wars. But still, I think it's a rather flawed perspective to just getting lost in the sauce, I think. And being fighting a war so long, you can't actually see the true enemy. Is it the fans? Is it Disney? I can't tell from this video. Seems like an attack at both. As I say that as someone who's sympathetic but critical of MauLer, imagine how someone who's biased against him will perceive him. Also, I've been watching the YMS stuff, and that's probably going to be 2 weeks away where I cover that. So fun times ahead.
Could cause so much destruction within. A conflict that lacks focus because, unlike Leela, nobody has been killed thanks to her flaws. Only soldiers dying in a war to defend the world from.
Again, I'm sorry I have to bring this up. It's like MauLer, I'm not going to say he's purposely leaving out the choice Ahsoka made before she was plunged over that cliff. She was sentenced. She basically gave her Padawan a command that would have ended in her death, most likely. What are the chances that that girl, barely even a Jedi, could have destroyed that map with her gun and gotten out of that alive or captured and tortured? Okay. She was sentenced. She was pretty much telling the girl to die. Her better choice would have been to hold the map hostage and get away. That would have been her best bet. Her choice to just give it up, live to fight another day. There is a certain philosophy with that. And the consequences of that are really hard to tell.
From tyranny, something that requires far more contemplation and understanding for an audience than Rosario Dawson crossing her arms. But no, it's all about actually how her lineage stretches through all of the Jedi and that her legacy is to train the next one in Sabine. That's daunting considering the death and destruction that comes from training anyone this way, which is insane considering the dramatic and immense amount of good that Ahsoka has done as a result of her training that isn't even brought.
See, MauLer's obsession with that one line. Okay? Maybe you need to autistically do an autistic check for some of these lines to make sure someone like MauLer, who has such a hyperfixation on that particular line, doesn't fixate on it and think that's what it's about. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did mean for the audience to hyperfixate on that. I sort of doubt it, given everything that everyone's saying about the vagueness. Probably just thought it sounded cool and didn't realize how some audience members would perceive it. Shit. Are audience screenings still a thing, or do we just need to upgrade the audience screenings? That's a whole another bag, I guess. Maybe that's just going down. The audience that they get to screen this sort of shit. If they still do audience screenings, who knows if they even bother with that shit anymore?
Brought up. But no, it's about how Ahsoka wants to be close with Sabine and train her, only she fears a betrayal or a turn or abandonment, even though her switch to train Sabine happened in a couple of seconds with all the facial expression of a fucking mollusk. But no, it's about how she doesn't like to take risks. She'd rather...
I think the actual training of her is a secondary cause, a lost cause if the show's meant to be perceived. I think she just wants her as an ally. She knows she's a reliable ally who can handle herself around the sort of people she can. And maybe she's having a moment of weakness. Maybe she shouldn't have brought her along. Having doubts about that. Fixating on this sort of little element is just out there, given there's nothing in the media to actually support this reading of MauLer's. Sorry, there isn't. He's just looking into it himself.
Destroy the star map and condemn Sabine to a life of wondering what if, then take the chance at something better. What? She wanted to destroy it to prevent the bad guys from reaching Thrawn. If she wanted to destroy it in general, she would have done it in episode 1. The key to understanding the cope of the family, take the chance at...
Okay, yeah, Gray. Yeah, I understand. You are a very fair person, Gray. You gave Wheel Time Season 2 a much better shake than I would have. Okay. But yeah, maybe we're just getting old, Gray. Okay, things are changing. Quality's going down. Mass appeal is going out. My main reason, the IJP Mexican, sort of, I don't even know what's going on. I'm just sort of criticizing MauLer for his optics. Okay, because this is a really bad optical look. Okay, this video was called Disney Star Wars Cannot Grow Up. He did basically two quick unbridled praises and compared it to what's equivalent to a really over the top unbridled rage behind it. And setting that side by side really creates a unfairness to it. And there's definitely a strong bias against Disney as a whole, which, yeah, that's going to build up if you keep going after these shows, especially after the appreciation of Andor. Like, oh, maybe Disney came to senses. Then you see the sort of going back to form with Ahsoka. I'm not sort of in this. I watched a little bit of Obi-Wan. I watch a little bit of all this stuff and just be like, okay, not liking this. Look at the reviews. Yeah, But I decided to dive in this because this seems rather odd for MauLer to make this sort of short video and to make it how he is, especially considering how good faith he is. But maybe he's just really getting tired of Disney or some other external stuff. As I said, going to go into the sort of YMS thing there. Really hard to tell what connects with what, because I'm not going to say MauLer's a robot. He's human. Who knows what external factors will bias him any particular way. Yeah, and yeah.
Something better. What? She wanted to destroy it to prevent the bad guys from reaching Thrawn. If she wanted to destroy it in general, she would have done it in episode 1. The key to understanding the cope of the fans with this one is...
Okay. What is he thinking the cope is going to be? Because this is a really weird one for me. She would have destroyed it in episode 1. As far as she's concerned, at the point why she has it, the bad guys don't know she has it. Okay? Or does she know the prisoner knows that she knows and has it? And that's another problem with this. I mean, it isn't the worst problem how the sort of Balin's Padawan sort of finds it so quickly and guesses at who's going to have it and how it's going to exactly be there. Yeah, another point against the writing, maybe. That's a really complex mess. That would be a bigger criticism. That it was just so easy for them to get the map from the one girl. And a lot of coincidences led to sort of that retrieval of the map. Yeah, the Padawan really fucks up in many ways.
Is right here.
This isn't explicit. I know. But I think it's implied.
The episode does have some explicit bits, the summary of which would be, people die when I involve myself and I could fall in the same way my master did, I should stop fighting. Yeah, but you gotta fight or you die. Well, then I choose to live and also not be a bad man like you were. And this was brought on by utterly invented horseshit. Interpretation 723 is that Ahsoka sees her life as that of within the shadow of Anakin Skywalker, and thus Darth Vader. Will she make his mistakes, and is it because of her lack of action that he fell? Anakin wants to teach her that she can move well beyond him and live her best life anew, baptized in fire, free of concern that she would ever make his mistakes, blah, blah, blah. It's like people ignored everything that set this up and then they hyper-embellish what this actually was to compensate for their desire to love Star Wars.
And it seems MauLer's doing the complete opposite. This is very reactionary. And I really wish I had way more time to go over this, but my schedule this weekend's been rough. That's why I want the Sunday morning stream. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video on this, try to talk to some people, integrate it into a video. So shoot me a DM or text if you want to discuss this with me. I already had one discussion with this at the very start. Got a lot of prep for other things, but take care until next time. Thanks for everyone who came by. Bye.